Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we offer a brief lesson from a section of today's reading and then we examine a single relevant question that passage points us to. Today I'm joined by Rivenbark and we're looking at a passage in Job chapter 39. Wild animals being talked about seems to be a little bit strange at times. So at first glance, we would assume that wild animals served as these further demonstrations of God's power and control, but this is kind of only a superficial observation. A closer look at the wild animals in God's speech shows that it is their lack of morals that God emphasizes. There are particular actions that would be considered especially immoral in Job's Middle Eastern or Mid-Eastern culture were they to be done by humans. So verse 4 talks about wild goats demonstrate a lack of respect for their parents. The wild donkey demonstrates a lack of authority. Verse 11 and 12, the wild ox demonstrates a lack of faithfulness and dependability. In verse 15 and 16, the ostrich demonstrates a lack of love for her young and a complete devoid of wisdom. Verse 22, the horse represents courage based upon ignorance, which is more ignorance than courage. And verse 29 and 30, the hawk and the eagle demonstrate incredible violent murder for the purpose of feeding their young. The point here is not only that God controls these wily, unruly, untamed creatures, but that God does so without the presence of the fear of God or the presence of morals in the animal kingdom. The implied meaning is that Job should reason from the lesser to the greater. If God understands and deals appropriately with the amoral animals, how much more will God understand and deal with mankind when he fears the Lord and searches for wisdom? So let's tiptoe out into maybe some dangerous territory. Western society presents tremendous compassion for animals. I mean, we go to great lengths. Earlier this week, we talked about your grandson's new puppy. And no doubt they have spent an enormous amount of money.
That's why I don't have one.
That dog. People who are hateful to other people are often incredibly kind and compassionate toward animals. Does this represent a conflict? Like, why is that? Why do you think people can be so kind to animals and so mean to humans?
I think there's a multitude of reasons. One, think about it. The person who has a problem dealing with humans but are very kind to animals, that's always a one-way conversation. You know, it's their viewpoint. They control every scenario and every situation. Human relationships take effort, take a lot of work. You got to be intentional about it if you're going to have them, and you got to maintain them. Whereas with animals, one, and I get the aspect, their love and gratitude and devotion is one way as well. They're just there. They're there for you. And it's easier in the sense not necessarily from a sense of their health care or feeding them, because that's pretty complicated now. It seems like, when you turn on TV, commercials are inundated with I've never seen so many dog foods in all my life, and I'm telling you, they're paying more for some of those specialty foods than what I pay for what I eat.
Yeah.
100%.
In Elizabeth City, at the exit, Tanglewood exit, so we live, and Elizabeth City is a town of 30,000 people, they don't even have a good steakhouse. They're getting a better one, but they don't even have a good steakhouse. No Target. But within a half a mile are 3 giant pet stores. Giant pet stores. Like, it should tell you something.
It does. And I have met a few people, usually not because I chose to, but that are described, it relates to this question you're asking, that can't seem to get along with any human being. They're just mean, rude, cantankerous, but yet they have a pet or pets that they seem to absolutely love. I think part of what you see in that is, I'm convinced God made us for community. He made us to have the capacity to be loved and to love. And when we are short circuited in that, we're going to look for an outlet for it. And for many people, it happens to be in the animal kingdom.
This concept of animals being amoral, we don't think of our dog. If my dog does something I don't want him to do, I don't go, he's a sinner.
Sam the sinner.
Yeah, right, exactly. You need to get right with God, or let me read you this scripture because it's going to change your life.
Yeah.
But with people, if my wife speaks to me wrong, my view of that is different because I expect different.
You have different expectations.
Right.
I watched some funny videos. They were funny because they weren't me, but were like animals that people had in their homes had gotten into stuff, and I mean completely like devastated stuff. And they come home, and they were just like, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." Whereas if somebody had done that,
right,
they would have reacted 1,000 times.
Exactly.
Different.
Right. It's cute when the dog does it. It's not when the person does it. That becomes, whether that's the reason or not. But I am amazed. That's a great example of, oh, that's cute. Oh, if your kid had done it, he would have got 39 lashes, with a braided cord.
Yeah.
And it should tell us, and I believe we're in a world now where we have people who have more compassion on animals and concern for animals than they do people.
I would not argue that at all. I think that is the case. I really do.
What happens when we get those things out of order?
One of the things, there's a certain set of commercials. They're ads is what they are. They're trying to solicit people to support a particular cause that's related to animals. And the Bible's very clear on this. If you have animals, you ought to take good care of them. You ought to be kind and all those things. But sometimes when those particular ads come on, and one time I was in a setting where somebody said, that's all well and good. Said, but now whether this is accurate or not, so I'm not saying this as an accurate statement, but their comment was, the vast majority of people who will sacrificially give to help those animals usually have no problems supporting abortion related to a human being. And again, please clarify, I'm not saying that those percentages, but I know the statement itself has some accuracy to it. And it seems,
and it has to have some accuracy.
Yes, it seems like our society. I mean, used to service dogs have always been a thing, but that was extremely rare that there'd be a service dog. Everybody's got a service dog now.
The airlines have had to crack down on it because so many people were bringing them on, and they can't. They have to allow it. Right? If you have a service dog at a hotel, you have to allow it, even if you have a no pet policy.
Yeah, and the same thing at federal buildings,
right,
like federal courthouse. If it's a genuine certified, it has to be allowed in, even though there's no pet policy.
Right.
But recently, when my wife and I flew, I mean, there were people with toting dogs, walking dogs, carrying them on their back, and I'm like, how's that? I've seen
the two best I've seen. So. The two best I have seen on an airplane. I saw videos. Somebody had a service pony, a miniature pony. They brought on the plane.
I would hate to be in the seat right behind them.
The best one though was a service peacock. Somebody brought that peacock on the airplane, and you can go look up the videos. It spreads all out on the plane, and people are trying to duck. I'm like, now everybody else is going to need a service animal.
That's right. They got issues.
Traumatized.
Yeah, they got
your peacock. Do you have any other theories about why God used the animal kingdom to respond to Job's question?
Well, I think one, it's something he could relate to.
Right.
He had experience with most, if not all, of these animals at some point in time to some level. And it was something it was easily relatable to. When Jesus told parables, he told stories about things people could relate to. I'm convinced Job could relate to these, but I think also he was driving the point that if I have sovereignty and control and authority over these things that have also been created by me, and yet I have not given them the level of awareness and the ability to respond to me like I have to you, then why would you ever think that I'm not sovereign and in control over you in your life, to whom I have given these extra benefits to and blessings?
Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us next week as we continue our discussion around our reading plan.